Hello, everybody. It's Matt from Cruise Blog in the house. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday and Happy New Year, everybody. Hope you all had a great Christmas and you're looking forward to a great holiday season coming up here with New Year's just around the corner. Hello and welcome. It's just me today. I know, I'm sorry just to disappoint all of you guys. Don't worry, the team will be back in the new year, but with the holidays and everything going on, it's a little tough. But and again, also apologies for changing the time today on you. We're supposed to go live at 11, and I completely forgot I had to bring the car in for service well, earlier than that, but I would not have made it back in. Suffice to say, we're here and we're ready to talk about the cruise first time cruise mistakes. These are probably, I hesitate to say the worst of the worst, but they're the kind of mistakes you really never ever want to make. And I feel like people that are brand new to cruising tend to make them more than others. So, with that in mind, let's go over the first time cruise mistakes to avoid. Number one, booking a flight too early after the cruise. So this is really important. And, when you're planning your trip and you're planning your cruise, and when your cruise is over, you're going to pick a flight. And unfortunately, some people pick really early morning flights. I cannot tell you how many times I see somebody who has a cruise that ends on whatever day, and they book a flight for like 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning, or even earlier, because they look at the cruise documents, and the cruise documents show that the ship is coming in at 6 a.m. So, Matt, why would that be a problem to book my 9 a.m. flight? The reason is because the ship may come into port at 6, but it is not letting people off at 6. It is the time the ship will get into the port area, but it takes time for the ship to dock, it takes time for the ship to be cleared by local officials. And then it also takes time to actually start getting the process going, especially if you're checking luggage, if you're having the cruise line deliver luggage from the ship onto shore. So, what you don't want to do is book any flights in the early morning. I often tell people that as a rule of thumb, and obviously this depends on which city you're in, but I tell people not to book any flights earlier than noon for the day of disembarkation. If you can get like a noon flight or later, you're totally fine. But what you want to avoid doing is booking like a 9 or a 10 a.m. flight back home because you're just not going to have enough time. I mean, you might be able to hustle and make it off the ship. And if you're, know what you're doing and all that, that's great, except you're not a first time cruiser in that situation. I would definitely not recommend doing that. To save yourself headache, heartache, and angst, I definitely recommend booking a later flight, like noon timers. Better to have way too much time in the airport than not enough, or worse yet, miss your flight. So that is number one. Number two, pack. The number two cruise mistake that a lot of first timers make is to pack valuables in their checked luggage. This is an easy to make mistake, I think. Actually, the first one was too, but this one, if you're not thinking about it, you could easily make this mistake. And that is, you're going to go pack for the cruise, start putting things in there, underwear, shirts, pants, you put your jewelry in there. And then what you also put in there is your cash, your credit cards, your passports. That's a big one. And the reason why this is a problem is when you get to the cruise terminal and you give the porters your baggage to be delivered to the ship, if your valuables are in there, specifically your credit cards, your passports, your identification, that's a major problem because you can't get on the ship without them. So you want to keep those items with you on your body. You want to keep them in a carry-on bag in your pocket. You can hold it if you'd like to, but do not pack those items. It's super important. Number three mistake that first-time cruisers make is they'll assume that the ocean is calm. They watch those great commercials. We've all seen them, right? Ships sailing into the horizon, sun setting, drinks in hand, little champagne flutes. Clink. Ah, yes. And that does happen a lot, actually. But there can be motion in the ocean. You never know what to expect. And I would tell people also, as a first-time cruiser, not to assume you're going to get seasick by any means, but be prepared for getting seasick. What do I mean by that? Have a plan of action. Either purchase things like over-the-counter medication. I like Bonine personally. You could get the prescription patch behind your ear from your doctor called a scopolamine patch, I believe. You could get, there's like homeopathic strategies. You can take ginger pills. There's wristbands you can wear. Whichever you'd like, have a plan, like whatever that is. Don't go into your first cruise assuming it's going to be just no motion in the ocean whatsoever. You never know. Just to be safe, have those there. And by the way, it's also a good idea to have those things, even if you have cruised a lot before. I still bring mine all the time. You never know when it can hit. Now, our next cruise mistake to avoid, you might have thought I was going there for the first one, but that is, of course, flying to your cruise the same day your cruise begins. Let me tell you, I think this is probably the most dangerous mistake you can make because you can put your entire cruise vacation at risk. Do not fly into your city the same day your cruise departs. If your cruise leaves on a Friday, do not fly on Friday. Fly it on Thursday, at least, or even earlier than that. The reason being that there can be a delay flight. There can be a delay, cancellation, what have you. And if you miss embarkation because of a delayed flight, that's on you, buddy or gal. So that would really you'd lose out on your cruise. So what you want to do is come in at least one day ahead of time. I again cannot emphasize this enough because it is such a common problem that occurs. Every so often we see this horror story of some family that spent thousands of dollars on their cruise. They flew in the same day, flight was canceled, delayed, what have you, and they missed out on the cruise. Depending on the line, some lines have later embarkation times than others, but mostly if you're not on board by like 3 o'clock, that's it. So come in at least a day ahead of time. That way you protect yourself against a travel delay, and also you get to start your vacation a little earlier. I know you have to spend more on maybe a hotel. Trust me, better to spend a little bit more money on a hotel than lose all your money on the cruise. So definitely a mistake to avoid. Number, I don't know what we're up to on the list now. Not pre-booking cruise purchases early. You can buy drink packages and Wi-Fi and especially dining and the spa on board your cruise, but it's going to cost you more money on board your cruise. When you book it on board the ship, you're basically paying like full retail. Think of it that way. But if you book it before the cruise via the website or the cruise line app, you can save a lot of money. Many lines offer discounts. Royal Caribbean is really a good example of this. They will offer a ton of discounts if you pre-purchase before your cruise. So don't wait to book these things. I'll give you an example of this. On my very first celebrity cruise, I went on board, didn't pre-purchase internet, realized the included internet was terrible, and then went to upgrade it, and I had to pay the full price on that. So don't do that. If you know you want these things, pre-purchase, save some money. Our next cruise mistake to avoid for a first timer, obviously this could also apply to like any form of travel, but that's overpacking. And I often include overpacking on lists like this because you don't want to overpack in the sense that you don't want to be showing up there with so much luggage that you're just inundated by it, right? I do believe that some overpacking isn't a bad idea, like packing an extra pair of underwear or two, having a sweater that you may not actually ever use. Right, that's okay. What you want to avoid rather is just packing clothing for the sake of packing clothing, like just having like 3 outfits a day or something excessive to the point where you're going to waste space, maybe even money if you're flying and paying for luggage. Do that. Try to be try to think smart about it. Number one, you can reuse clothing on a cruise ship. Believe it or not, nobody on board is going to remember what you wore before that. As long as it's not soiled, you can wear, pants again or a shirt again. Heck, you can send out clothing for laundry on board. It does cost money, but that is an option. You can wash your clothing in your stateroom sink and then hang it up in your shower. There are ways to do laundry on board a ship. Maybe you're on a cruise line that has self-service laundry, like Disney Cruise Line. You can go do that as well. Anyway, the point is that you can reuse clothing. Don't assume that, I need to have something for the pool, something for the evening, and then something for like after dinner. Like, you don't have to go to those lengths. Nobody really does. So don't overpack. Next one is really important, and this is actually my last item on my list here. But before we get to the last item, do me a favor in the chat. I want to know, what is your top cruise mistake that you see people making? Maybe you made it yourself. No judgments here. Type it in the chat. I'm looking forward. We'll read those after my last one here. And this is a really important one. Cruise mistake. And honestly, people that cruise a lot make this mistake too. And that is picking the wrong ship for you. So a very common question, maybe the most common question I get is, Matt, I'm looking to book a cruise. Is this ship a good ship? Is whether it's Allure of the Seas, whether it's Carnival Mardi Gras, whether it's MSC Meraviglia, Disney Fantasy, is this a good ship? And the answer depends on the person, right? Ultimately, the best way to answer that question is, what are you looking for in a cruise ship? So as an example, let's say you say, well, we've got a lot of kids on with us, we're taking my kids and going with our family. Anyway, we really want to have a ship that has water slides, that has a really good entertainment and has some good specialty dining options, right? If that's the case, Enchantment of the Seas is a terrible choice for you. For you, not in general, but for you. Because Enchantment doesn't have water slides. It has shows, but it doesn't have like, the really big, well-known, top of the line shows. And it only has like one, well, technically two specialty restaurants, Chops Grill and Chef's Table. But I digress. The point is, it's not a great choice for that person. In that situation, a ship like Harmony of the Seas might be a better fit for them, right? So what you want to do is look at what the ship offers and make sure it's in line with what you're looking for. Oftentimes people talk about, is a big ship or a small ship? Does it matter which one I pick? And I would say it doesn't matter, but it matters only to you in that does it have what you're looking for in a ship, for that matter. So researching ahead of time, finding out what's there to do in the on board the ship is super important and can really make the difference between a good cruise or even a bad cruise for that matter and a fantastic cruise. So there you go. All right, so here are some of the things that you guys said in chat that were mistakes to avoid that I didn't mention, or maybe you made it yourself. Number one, forgetting sunscreen on day one. I know Elizabeth, who's one of our writers here on Cruise Blog, she's got the day off today because of the holiday, or she took it off rather for the holiday, I imagine. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is Elizabeth, and I'm sure she doesn't mind me saying this, probably gets sunburned the most of anybody in the crew. I remember there's a video of her in some of our videos we've done here on our YouTube channel of her being totally roasted. Forgetting sunscreen anyway, but not, or better yet, Kyle, forgetting to apply sunscreen and reapplying it. Guys, it's no joke. That sun in the Caribbean is super strong. And if you're going in the summer months, it's one, you apply it in the morning. Yeah. Apply it again. You got to keep putting it on like every 2 to 3 hours. That's a big one right there. Absolutely. T-Mail says not planning shore excursions, waiting until I get in the port. Yeah, and this one, listen, if you're an experienced cruiser, if you've been to a port many times, right, you can slide by this one. But since we're talking about first-time cruise mistakes, I totally agree. Not pre-planning shore excursions is a mistake because there's so many options. There's so many choices, and it's hard to really make a decision on a whim as to what's a good tour. Is it reputable? Is this a good choice for your family? Is it the best price out there? So what you really want to do is plan ahead. Research your tours. You can book it through the cruise line. You can book it on your own. Either one works. It's just a matter of you figuring out what's going to work for you and doing that research. It does take a lot of time to find a good one, by the way. You don't need to spend hours and days trying to do it. And I get some people like, well, what if I don't know what the weather's gonna be like? I don't know what I'm gonna feel like. I just want to get out and wing it. Okay. In some ports, it's easier to do than others, right? And in other ports, it's honestly a mistake to go that route. I'm looking at you, Falmouth, Jamaica, as an example. So what you want to do is, I agree with T-Mail, pre-plan shore excursions, or at least research what's available in the port. Have a plan. Maybe you're gonna say, listen, I'm not booking anything because, maybe it's gonna rain. Maybe we're gonna be not feeling like doing anything, but have a plan. Here's plan A, plan B, and plan C, as opposed to walking off the ship, looking around, and trying to figure out what's there. So, SCJ says bringing pillows and blankets on a first cruise. Yeah, I mean, the only mistake here is that you don't need to bring those things. But you'd be surprised how many people do that. I think the pillows thing, some people, I'm going to assume, SCJ, that those people are like, well, I really like my home pillow. So, and I've done that before. I think actually I tried to bring it on one cruise and I forgot it in the hotel beforehand. Like, it never actually made it on the ship. Rest in peace. That was like my favorite pillow of all time, but I digress. But I'm going to augment your tip here. Towels. That's a big one people bring. Oh, we're going to the beach, man. I need to bring towels, right? No, the cruise line provides them for you. But yeah, you don't need to pack any of those things. Leave those at home for sure. We got a couple of questions in the chat here, and I'm not sure I'll be able to answer them, but we'll see what I can do. SCJ, what are some things to do in Barcelona, Spain, and Seville, Spain? Great question. I mean, obviously, there's so much history and so much culture in both of these cities. There's a lot of great things to do in either one. I've not been to either one of these ports, so unfortunately, I can't give you like a firsthand, like, hey, try this tour out, this option out. But I would say going over to cruise.blog, we do have the search feature you can use to look up some of these things here. But if anyone in the chat wants to recommend what to do in Barcelona and Seville, I would definitely lean, if I were you, if I was going to Barcelona, I'd be looking at the history, seeing how many historical sites you can look up. And again, this goes back into that shore excursion tip I mentioned earlier. Research fun things to do in Barcelona, fun things to do in Seville, right? And find what appeals to you and go about it that way. Celine, for a Mediterranean cruise, is it better to start or end in Rome? I think end in Rome. Usually, when cruises do interporting, and I know Royal Caribbean does this, where the cruise, like, it's kind of weird in Europe. It's weird only since we don't do this in the US, but they'll have cruises that will begin in Barcelona, do a little bit, do like half a cruise, go to Rome, and then people get on the ship in Rome to start a cruise over there. So it's almost like you can either do 7 nights if you start in Barcelona, or you can do 3 nights or something like that, a shorter cruise if you start in Rome. Anyway, I would think you'd want to be on Barcelona to experience the whole thing. So I would say Barcelona if it's one of those sailings. Obviously, if you're doing like a 7-night cruise that goes to the Adriatic and it's out of Rome, that's totally fine there. But I think, Celine, that's what you're referring to. Ted says another mistake is forgetting that your cabin door locks behind you when it closes while you're standing in the hall in the bathrobe without your cruise card. I have done this many a time, not the bathrobe scenario, but I have definitely done you let the door slam, it slams, and then you do I'm going to guest services because I just locked myself out. Yeah, this is, listen, this happens to the best of us, not just first timers. I would tell you that, Ted, the only thing is, if it happens to you and your stateroom attendant is in the hallway, maybe try to flag them down. But otherwise, yeah, that guilty as charged. Celine wants to know, is Barcelona or Rome better for an embarkation to debarkation port in terms of safety? I'm not really sure that one has a major advantage over the other. The major thing, obviously, number one, Celine, and you know this, I think, there's no guarantees of safety. There's not like one place in the world I can tell you, Celine, you'll be totally safe, 100% safe if you go to this. There's always risks, right? Pickpocketing is probably the biggest issue that you find in Europe. I feel like when it comes to pickpocketing, number one, being vigilant about your surroundings. Number two, putting your not leaving your like wallet in your back pocket kind of situation. Be smart about it. There are pickpocket proof pants and things like that. And anyway, you can go about it that way. But in terms of it being, here's the thing: Barcelona is a lot easier. Rome requires, even though it says Rome is an hour away from the port of, I always butcher this name. It's Civitavecchia. I hope I said that right. I definitely did not. But anyway, that's logistically, it's more of a pain than anything else. Whereas Barcelona is a lot more convenient. So maybe that's one way to look at it. But obviously, Celine, if you want to spend some time in Rome and then go on a cruise, far be it from me to tell you that's a mistake by any means. But in terms of it being, safe, better in terms of port safety, I would say it's more of a flip a coin situation. There's not like an inherent difference that I'm aware of that would apply to there. So I think it's more important for you to look at the logistics involved, what you're looking to do pre-cruise, those kinds of things right over there. But honestly, the logistics of getting to the port is the biggest thing that stands out to me when you talk about Barcelona versus Rome. All right, well, there you go. Those are some of the big first-time cruise mistakes to avoid. Unfortunately, let's number one, I hope none of these ever apply to you. Number two, if it do happen to you, I hope some of these are recoverable. The flying in the same day of your cruise is probably the worst one here. The rest of them are kind of, I missed one on my list over here. Booking a stateroom purely by price. This one I do agree with. So this is another one, of course I agree with. I wrote it on the list. Another mistake I forgot to include. So when you go to book a cruise and you go, all right, let me go find a cruise. Oh, look, this ship, it's super cheap. I'm going to book this one specifically based on purely price without looking at anything. That's a mistake because, of course, there's a reason why, and you might be overlooking some important features or amenities or itineraries or cabin that is important to you in terms of what you're looking to have over there. So definitely, when you're booking your cruise, I know chasing an attractive price, getting like a super great deal, it's a great feeling. I love that too. But you don't want to go into it just looking purely at price. Look at why is it cheaper? Is it an older ship? Does it have the features you want? Is the cabin you're selecting maybe an obstructed balcony or obstructed view? Is it inside only? Are you okay with all those things? There's going to be reasons why it's cheaper. And I'll give you an example of this. One of our writers, Callista, went on it. We found a great last minute deal on Enchantment of the Seas out of Athens. It was a 7-night cruise to the Greek Isles. And it was like super cheap. It was like 199 a person, something like that. But the reason why it was so cheap, number one, it was a repositioning cruise between Athens and Barcelona. So logistically, that was an issue, and it cost more money to do a flight that way. Number two is an inside room. Number three was Enchantment of the Seas. Inside cabin, you all know about the pros and cons of an inside cabin. And then Enchantment, older, smaller ship. When you look at it, you got to find some of the things there that apply to you. So that's super important. So there you have. Oh, Ted has got one more for us. I think it's a really good one. Very important tip to apply, but a mistake to avoid. And that is not carrying a manual watch to ship's time when you're visiting in port. This is a biggie. Absolutely, Ted. I agree. So the mistake here is people usually use their phone, which is great. I use my phone all the time too. But your phone may automatically change to the local time zone. And the problem with that is if your ship is on ship's time. When you get to a port, your ship will either be on local time or ship's time. Sometimes local time and ship's time are exactly the same, right? If your cruise goes out of Miami and goes to Nassau, Bahamas, they're in the same time zone. But if your cruise goes out of Miami and goes to San Juan, Puerto Rico, San Juan could be on a different time zone. They're an hour ahead. And if you're an hour ahead, probably in this scenario, this doesn't work as well. It's more like if you go to Cozumel and they're an hour behind. Anyway, you run the risk of missing the ship, basically. So either get a watch, not a smart watch, but a manual watch to be able to keep the local time or your time that you should be on, or in your phone, certainly make sure you change your settings, your time zone to be manual, not automatic, so you can figure it all out. Dillingham, other than the fancy new ships, what are the biggest changes coming to Royal Caribbean or the cruise industry in 24? For Royal Caribbean, I wrote an article about this, Dillingham, if you didn't see it on RoyalCaribbeanblog.com earlier this week. I would say there's probably two major changes that you should be aware of that have nothing to do with new ships for Royal Caribbean. Number one is that at some point in the year, Royal Caribbean is going, actually, it's probably three. At some point in the year, the unlimited dining package will be able to be pre-bookable instead of waiting to get on board the ship to make reservations. Number two, the new adults only area at Coco Key open up, the Hideaway Beach Club. So that'll be applicable to anybody who goes to Coco Key. And number three, there's some new itineraries for 2024. As an example, Symphony of the Seas will sail out of New York City for the first time. So you got things like that. Hope that makes sense to you. SCJ, bringing drugs back you bought in Mexico while in port. Well, bringing drugs back in general. I mean, obviously there's certain risks, especially if you're buying prescription drugs. I'm not sure if you're talking about those or illegal drugs. Either way, don't bring drugs back. Prescription drugs, you got to understand the risks involved if you have a controlled substance without a prescription. But yeah, I would agree. And more importantly, forget the legal ramifications. There was an interesting article earlier this year I read, where a lot of those drugs are not legit. They say it's Xanax, but it's not really Xanax. So yeah, definitely be careful about that as well. Cool. Well, I wanted to keep this one short today, guys. We had some good things over here, and when we come back, not next week, but the week after, I believe we're going to have an MSC live stream where we'll talk with Chantel, who's our resident MSC cruise expert. We'll talk about MSC cruises and what you need to know, like why is it so cheap? What is it good about it? What stands out? What should you know about MSC cruises? So bring your questions there when we talk to Chantel about that. Until then, I want to wish everybody Happy New Year. Hope you all have a great time celebrating. Be safe out there. And hopefully 2024 is going to be a fantastic year of cruising for you guys. So thank you all for joining us here. Check out Cruise Blog. We got some new articles up there today as well. And have a great weekend, everyone. Bye, guys.